Welcome, everybody. We're going to call this meeting to order. We'll begin with adoption of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, moving to public comment on closed session. Do we have any public comment on closed session from the floor? Seeing none, any public comment from the phones? Seeing none, we will now adjourn from open session into closed session. We will begin with a report out on closed session.
Board met in closed session to discuss the items identified on the agenda. No reportable action took place. Mr. Chair, that concludes the report.
Thank you, sir. Next, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance, so if everybody will please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next we'll have roll call. Present.
Chairman Heyman,
Present.
Vice Chair Peters,
Present.
Director Boyd,
Present.
Director Etnier,
Present.
Director Waddleton.
Present.
Okay, moving to public comment. Do we have any public comment? Or, well, let me back up. This time is reserved for the public to address the board about matters not on the agenda. No action will be taken on non-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have any public comment from the floor? We do.
Yes,
Go
there
ahead,
is.
sir.
My name's Lyle Fisher. I member of the PAC, if we still have a PAC, I don't know. It's okay. I had intended to be here last month and stand before this podium, but a funeral in Northern California kept me from doing that, so I'm here today. And what I wanted to say was I wanted to publicly thank and commend April for her stellar job with the workshop she did at the end of April. Now, as you now know, excuse me, it was well attended and well received. I figured that when she convened that evening, there was more than 50 people here in the auditorium, and we don't have that now, I know, but it's close. So I do believe that your board made money with that workshop, figuratively, of course, because of the information put out. Some people got up at the end of it and commented that they appreciated the evening hours at venue and appreciated the information provided. I was especially interested in hearing what Dr. Kincaid had to say, since he is I can't say the word right now, authorities, expert witness for the adjudication, and I was not disappointed. He had really done his homework and did well. The only downside I saw to that was that Dr. Kincaid was on last, and a lot of people had already left, which is very unfortunate. Now, for a future workshop, which I do believe should be continued, I would sure like to see Dr. Kincaid come back and be first on the agenda, so that way the people that have a tendency to leave early would get his presentation. Even though I agreed with him coming on last, because on a captive audience, you like to do the most powerful speaker last, because you remember the last one, we don't remember the first one. It's what happens. So anyhow, those are my thoughts. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lyle.
Judy Decker. I too would like to commend April. I noticed in the few months that she's been manager, the outstanding upgrade in the board package this month. For the first time in all of the years that you have been in existence, we have a finance report. Hooray. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy.
I want to echo a couple of things that were shared. The first one is there was a great turnout at the workshop, which I did mention last month as well. Maybe partially because it was in the evening when folks aren't having to take off of work. So just a thought in terms of future time. I did also appreciate the finance report. April, I kind of liked it better when the invoice packet was separate, just 2 cents. I know it's probably more work. But I did appreciate the finance report. It was very helpful. And I think that's a really good first step. But the other thing I really would urge the board to do is to establish a finance committee so people can be looking at this with other eyes besides just the 5 of you, who's a very limited group. So I do think that that would be a great next step in transparency and definitely worth undertaking. The other thing I wanted to mention was, as a public employee working for a public agency who's done capital projects, as someone who's been annoyingly nosy in public projects by Caltrans and the county and the city, I am just a little mystified by the process that's being undertaken through the pipeline. Generally speaking, one would have the whole design process, ensure it's in some kind of like budget that you have and know you can afford, and then start to pursue things like putting shovels in the ground and permitting. So my concern with this is particularly twofold, maybe 3. The first one is I don't think it's possible as a board who is in charge of ensuring that this project is done in the public interest for you to meaningfully do that without all of the information ahead of you. Just like we're hearing from the county right now, we can't look at a data center until we have all the information. We don't have all the information about a pipeline, yet we're deciding to put shovels in the ground. The other prong of that is that we also should have the public able to have meaningful input into these processes. And if you don't have the information, surely we don't have the information to be able to say, yes, let's pursue an either $200 million, $400 million, or I think $500 million project that ultimately will come out of our tax dollars regardless of where those streams are coming, and very likely directly out of our property tax and local fees here in our valley. The other point along with that is, I don't know if you all have been watching the litigation. I assume you have been. There's like 50 people on that for the most boring episode of Law & Order ever. But one of the things that I think took a lot of us by surprise was it does seem to be that perhaps that 7650 number that has mystified us through model updates was an assumption and not a model result. So the reality is that when the court comes out with the decision, and that if that decision is that 7650 number should not have been a result because it was an assumption, then there's going to be a lot of changes to things. So I do really think it would be very smart for our board to be putting this project on pause until we know what the results of that are. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Can I clarify something real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
And good morning. Keith Lemieux, I'm the attorney. The board has not decided on a pipeline project. What the district, what the entity is currently doing is doing an evaluation. And that will come in front of us for a environmental report and an approval after the environmental report is approved, somewhere down the line, I think closer to the end of the year, if I understand correctly. So, yes, and I would not agree with your characterization that the 7650 was at all characterized as something that was not the product of the model. Just for clarity, I think as was probably talked about at the workshop, we have to manage to a specific number, but all of the models, all of the analysis produces ranges rather than numbers. It's not simply solving a math problem and you get one number and that's the only number possible. So it is the case that setting the exact number within the range is a policy decision that the board has undertaken. And when the GA gets the opportunity to put on its case, I think all of that will be made clear to the court.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Steve.
Yes, go ahead.
If I might, just real quick to help a little bit, and that issue about the 7650, because there is a lot of confusion. I certainly appreciate the question and the concern about the confusion, because it has been said and presented that it is not really an assumption, but there's been said or it's been asserted that there's uncertainty in the number. And that's not an inaccurate phrase, but it's being taken out of context. Because the 7650 was evaluated, technically evaluated over and over by very prominent technical groups, including the TAC, which included Mojave, Meadowbrook, the Water District, Cyril's, all of them were there to evaluate and come up with an agreed upon replenishment number for the sustainable yield. So that was been done. It also went through the modeling group before it went into the model and verified it by the modeling group before it was used in the model. In the model, that number was verified by modeling and calibrating the model to historic conditions. If the model actually runs and produces historic conditions the way the model is created, and the model is created based upon the structure of our basin and the hydrology of the basin, if the model calibrates with the 7650, then the 7650 has been validated in the model. Also run were sensitivity runs, 10% more, 10% less than the 7650, which resulted in more confirmation that the 7650 was a good number. So the suggestion of an assumption is just not true. Even a suggestion that it was recommended by the GSP is not true. It was all done through the TAC and the modeling group that was set up to develop the model, to actually run the model, and based upon extensive technical review before it ever got there. So I think that explanation is important to put out there and make people understand that the 7650 is not an assumption. It is not a measured number like you would a meter delivering water to the basin or a meter delivering water to a house. You don't have those facilities. You have to do the technical evaluation. Then you have to verify it by running the model and using the model to calibrate the number and make sure it's correct. And that was done. So I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you, Steve.
Renee Westerlusk. I have some questions about the new IWVGA site. There is no posting of the 2020 GSP or the 2025 GSP. And I understand, I think they're on the other website that's the IWVGSP.com, but I think there needs to be like links so that would, you click on a link and then you can get it from the other site. Because I kept looking for it and I couldn't find the original GSP lately. I wanted to refer back to it, and I ended up having to go to the DWR site of approved GSPs to find it. And then this morning it dawned on me that it would be on the IWVGSP.com. So I would like something done about that so people can readily look up the 2020 GSP or in the 2025 GSP. And then I wanted to know, will there be a way to access past meetings? Because right now, there's only agendas and minutes for 2025 and 2026 on the new website. And sometimes I like to go back and remember when something was approved. And there's a lot of stuff that's happened between 2018 and 2024. So, and I do go back sometimes to look things up. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention. Okay.
Thank you, Renee. Just a couple comments there. I was going to touch base on this under the general manager report. There are going to be constant updates to the website as we migrate information from one platform to the next. Unfortunately, this is what led to needing a new website, is a lot of the information on the previous website was connected to OneDrives because the previous website limited the capacity of a document we could upload. Understandably, a lot of our documents, if they have attachments, figures, are a larger file size. Excuse me. And so when we did that migration, all of those that were linked to the OneDrive now have to be re-uploaded to the new website. It doesn't migrate the information over the way we had hoped. The GSP, I did notice that as well, Renee, that was one of the reports that did not come over. So likely, under the reports page, I'll just put a link for the iwvgagsp.com where you can find the periodic evaluation. All of that is on the one page, and I think that's just a great tool, and I'd like people to be going over there and using it as much as possible. So thank you for the comments. Again, for the website, open to any suggestions. I wear a lot of hats, but I always say IT and web design is not my strong one. So we are working on it weekly, daily, and the updates will be made available as they go.
Okay, any other public comment from the floor?
Yes, Shirley Kirkpatrick, and I've been coming here for many years, and I just want to make an observation. Is for the last 10 years, since the beginning of the sustainable groundwater law that came into place, this is the first time I've seen so many people, and I'm very grateful to see that. I used to come here at 11 o'clock. I know people working. I remember several years ago when Paul Gosselin told us in sitting over here that 1 million acres of farm will be taken out of commission. That really was upsetting, but I don't think anybody was aware of what was going on back then. So I was here when Mitch Gleason was coming over here on base, but as we see now that we have a whole bunch of people, and I am grateful for the education process that's going on right now, and I'd like to hopefully see everybody really research the issues. And as far as I'm concerned, the data center is kind of a side issue, but I've always, for the last several years, have been concerned about water and our water being taken away from us to the state and taking away our water sovereignty. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to the phones. Caller, go ahead. Caller, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Mike Sinot. I don't think any of you will disagree when I say that the last 8 years have been extremely controversial and divisive for the people living in Ridgecrest, Inyo, Kern, and Trona. The Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Sustainability Agency was created December 8, 2016. SGMA created over 160 GSAs that were intended to have local control. Governor Jerry Brown called this democracy in action at the 10-year anniversary of SGMA in Sacramento. Excuse me. This GSA certainly has no local control, and it's not representative democracy in action. The IWV Groundwater Authority is run by attorneys, outside contractors, a supervisor staff member from San Bernardino County, an attorney from Inyo County, a Kern County supervisor from Bakersfield, a city attorney from Ridgecrest who lives in Los Angeles, and a water manager from San Rafael. Stetson Engineers was hired in fall of 2017. The IWV Groundwater Sustainability Plan was approved in January 2020. With all due respect to Gene Moran, the hydrogeologist and employee at Stetson Engineers, the GSP was rushed, the Sayfield was never scientifically validated by the TAC, and the GSP authored by Steve Johnson should never have been approved by DWR in the first place. In yesterday's testimony at the Phase 2 Comprehensive Adjudication Trial, Johnson was evasive and forgetful. And back in 2019, when members of the TAC and the public submitted extensive comments and concerns about the GSP, he dismissed many, if not most of them, with a so noted reply. The members of the TAC weren't given access to the original DRI model. Their concerns were ignored, and Johnson testified yesterday the Sayfield was fixed, never to be changed again. The GSP was a rush job. Steve Johnson was unwilling to take responsibility for the science, passing it off to Ms. Moran, and he never asked DRI for access to the model. Today we know that the original DR model was never produced, The safe yield of 7650 was fixed by consensus of the TAC, and that was the number used to calibrate the groundwater flow with the model's calculations. The 2020 GSP approval letter from DWR delineated 7 issues that needed to be addressed. The 5-year periodic review of the GSP was filed late, with only 2 weeks given for the large pumpers expert review of a 2,000-page document. As far as Stetson's testimony that the safe yield was agreed to by consensus of experts at the TAC, today we heard Tim Parker, the Indian Wells Valley Water District expert witness, call that assertion hogwash. The TAC wasn't given the opportunity to establish a safe yield. Regardless of the outcome of the Phase 2 trial, change is certainly coming to the Groundwater Authority. In the city of Ridgecrest, Councilman Scott Heyman will be vacating his seat on the council and will step down as chair of the authority at the end of this year. The Indian Wells Valley Water District and ratepayers in the district have suffered damages approaching $20 million in the form of replenishment and extraction fees. Searles Valley Minerals is shutting down over half its operations, with over half their employees to be fired. The GA hasn't completed the design of the AVEC pipeline. No Table A water has been purchased, and you don't know what you're going to do with the water if it ever gets imported here. Last but not least, you've been getting bad legal advice. You sponsored bad legislation in secret,
Mike,
and
wrap
have results or mitigating any alleged desirable results. Yes.
Go ahead, wrap it up.
Did I have the beeper? Okay.
Yep.
Well, I've said it all. The changes coming to the Groundwater Authority in the city of Ridgecrest, whether your attorneys or your consultants like it or not. Thank you.
Do we have any other callers? Okay, seeing none, we will now move to item number 7, board member comments. Any comments from the board? Okay, seeing none. Well, I do have one comment. I too want to thank our general manager, April, for her prompt and hard work. The agendas have come out on time. I know when they don't come out on time, we hear about it a lot, but I just want to thank her for getting our packets out to us on time, and she's doing a great job actually as a general manager. So, moving on to item number 8, consent agenda. This will consist of items 8A, B, B1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Does any member of the public wish to have an item removed?
Could you remove item B for the invoice from the lobbyist?
Okay, let's bring it back, and we will, any member of the board wish to have an item removed? Okay, we will go ahead and get a motion on the other items consisting of item 8A, B, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, and now we'll bring it back to item number 4. Oh, sorry, hold tight. Yep.
So vote on and then go back to the one.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we'll move back to item number 4. Go ahead.
I was just wondering if you could provide a little bit of explanation, the sections P3 and D and P3E. I'm really just a little bit curious about, it's kind of a large bill for our lobbyist who's been, they probably have been averaging like $10,000 to $13,000. And then this one was 25. So it was a much larger invoice than usual. And I'm just curious, was that at the direction of the board? I'm assuming, based on what I'm reading, obviously some data center research was in that, which is definitely appreciated. But if you could just outline a little bit of what the items under those two sections, P3D and P3E, were, and what went into those, I'd appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to address.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
This is Michael McKinney with Capital Corps. P3D deals with groundwater adjudication legislation that is pending before the state of California. At this particular point in time, it has been approved by the board. P3E is a lot of general governmental affairs that deals with various aspects of groundwater authority policy and things that might impact the groundwater authority, including the state budget, which is a lot of our funding mechanisms and what have you that we are looking at, such as if you were to look under that, DWR's Proposition 4 guidance and what have you as a potential funding source for the groundwater authority, which is one of our charges. Water smart evaluation, same thing. Those are funding. And then, of course, the data center legislation, that would also be considered to be general governmental affairs. So anything that is not specifically directed but falls under the legislative agenda is in P3E. Anything that has a specific direction from the board is broken out, and that would be P3D.
So does, in P3D, I might be out of order, sorry, because it's $4,000 in P3D, and it just kind of says direct advocacy, assembly review, drafting. Could you speak to a little bit of like, what was the amendment that was being drafted? What, were you talking to the Parks and Wildlife Committee staff? Is there any details on that? Or is that something that could generally be added to an invoice so it's a little bit more transparent?
Those are provided to the board through various projects update memorandums, and they are not detailed out into our invoices. They're just generally as to who we spoke with and what the specific subject matter were. Amendments can range in various forms, and they change almost daily as language goes back and forth between the legislature, proponents, opponents of or stakeholders of a particular bill. So I don't have any specifics that I can talk about right here in open session. However, they are just general at this time.
And just to give you a reason for the concern, obviously after the AB 1413 and AB 1466 debacle, let's use that word, I think a lot of us are a little bit hyper aware of what might be happening behind closed doors that might surprise members of the public. And so I just think that providing a little more detail on that might be helpful for rebuilding some of that trust after that issue happened. So just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Ma'am, let me be very clear. AB 1413 is still alive.
All 2-year bills technically are. Thank you.
Okay, we will bring item 8B4 back to the board for a motion.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving to item number 9, discussion of Indian Data Center and proposed legislation. This will be led by Council Keith Lemieux.
Sure. The staff thought it would be helpful for me to give the board and the public a reminder of sort of the legal posture of where the GA sits with regard to the data center, and then I will turn it over for some proposals for the board to consider from Mr. McKinney. So for the benefit of the public, the Groundwater Authority has one purpose, and that is to protect and manage the groundwater resource. So this is the correct entity. I know I can see the sign Our Water. This is the correct entity to bring the concerns about the data center's water use to. Our job is to try to make sure that that there is sufficient sustainable water going forward. That's our mission, and so we have to be concerned about any new uses. Now, and I'll get to how we do that in a second. The twist on that, though, is that we are not a land use approval agency. We actually don't have any authority or ability to approve or deny the data center. That is held by the county and by some state agencies, but not by us. However, we do manage the groundwater. We have one mechanism for doing that, and that is called a groundwater sustainability plan. Some of you guys may have heard the term GSP thrown around a few minutes earlier. That's what they're talking about. The groundwater sustainability plan was a document that was originally adopted in 2020, following a lot of public participation. In a groundwater sustainability plan, you have to do two things. You have to provide an analysis about what your groundwater condition is to the best of your knowledge at the time. And having done that, if the basin is not in balance, meaning more is coming out than is going in, then you have to have a plan in order to get it into balance. So, and by the way, that is a living document. It's not a document you just do once and you're done. In fact, you have to consider it and update it continuously. Every year, you have to continue to report to the state about what you're doing to improve it. And every 5 years, you have to step back and reevaluate it and make sure that everything still works. So we've actually adopted a plan, and then we've gone through the reevaluation of the plan and made some improvements to it last year, the year before last. It's all blending together. So as I think you heard earlier, the Groundwater Sustainability Agency adopted a plan, and that plan shows that there is 7,650 acre-feet of water that's available each year to use without drawing the basin down. The problem is that although we don't have a clear understanding of all of the pumping going on, it appears from our best information that there's about 3 to 4 times as much water going out of the basin as is available for pumping. And the consequence of that over time is that the groundwater levels have gone down and continue to go down. So that means we are not currently sustainable. So what that means is, unfortunately, in the absence of any other water available, we're already pumping more water than we can. And eventually, what would happen is the water levels would go down below the levels of all the existing wells, and then we'd be in trouble. So what does that mean for a data center? Well, obviously, any new use in the absence of a plan to get us moving forward, any new use is just putting additional burden on an over-taxed basin. It's pretty simple in that regard. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the plan doesn't just identify the problem. The reason it's called a plan is we have to come up with a solution too. And we're trying to come up with a solution. I think earlier it was suggested we had made a decision on a pipeline. For clarity, that's one of the proposed solutions in the plan. But all we've been able to do so far is create an evaluation, in which we're currently doing, of that pipeline. So we do not have, the board has not approved a pipeline. We're pulling all of that information together, and that's happening later this year, so stay tuned. You know, I think I can speak for the board. We're hopeful that if not the pipeline, at least we have some plan, because you have to understand that in the absence of being able to bring in additional water, we have to cut back pumping. So that's what we're facing, and we're trying very hard to avoid that day. But that's what would be on the table. Now, I have to say one other thing before I turn this over to Mike for further discussion. I mentioned the 7650 number. I think you heard some reference earlier to some litigation. It is correct that that number has been continuously attacked since it was adopted, not just in a groundwater adjudication, but in other lawsuits as well, filed by large pumpers who believe that there is additional water beyond the 7650. Those, to date, all of those challenges have failed, but there is currently another, I guess a last challenge that is alleging that there's twice as much water as the GA thinks is available for pumping. Now, presumably that would be a great solace to the data center, who will probably cite to those reports as an example as to why the Groundwater Authority might be wrong in its assessment, and there might be enough water for the project. We're doing our best to provide the information necessary to the court, for the court to confirm the reports and all of the work we have done. But I just want to give you some context for this, so understand that, yes, we have approved a plan. The plan says that there is only 7650 available. That would not suggest that in the absence of any projects, there's water available for a data center, but that analysis is currently under attack. Now, with that as context, I think I'll turn it over to Mr. McKinney, who will provide you with some options regarding the data center with that context.
Good afternoon, members of the board. In the state of California, there are 50 pieces of legislation that had been introduced regarding data center development during the 25 and 26 legislative session. I am only going to be discussing those that do have an impact on water and water reporting at this point in time. The other legislation that is out there deals with CEQA, which is a planning authority that would be the responsibility of the county or the state. And then the other issues that are dealing with that are also dealing with utility rates, specifically electric utility rates, primarily, I should say. There are a couple of that talk about water rates, but most of them are limited to how it impacts the rate base of electricity. There is nothing within Sigma that requires any development to report prospectively, in other words, in advance of the development, to the groundwater authority its proposed use. We do, as a groundwater authority, have the ability to monitor pumping and monitor the environmental impacts, but nothing in Sigma actually requires advanced notification to the groundwater authority of any kind of planned project that would require major pumping. And in this case, you're talking about a data center that is proposing approximately 50 acre feet per year. That would be considered to be major for that section and that region. The legislation that is out there focused primarily on those reporting requirements for data centers. The proponents of those bills argue that there's going to be more information, more coordination of data. It'll allow for necessary requirements to be established within the permitting process and would end up being an ability to segregate the rates out where there was no cost shifting within the water rates. Opponents are arguing that that's additionally burdensome, that it will create privacy and security concerns that undermine data center development within the state of California, and it imposes a unique requirement on data centers that is not existent of other large-scale developments. There are three bills in question that deal with this. One is AB 1577, which is by Assemblymember Bauer Cahan. It specifically deals with reporting requirements upon applying for a discretionary permit. It is not a reporting requirement to the groundwater authority. It is a requirement to the permitting agency. So it would be to the county or to the state of California in this case. The bill is currently pending over in the Senate Rules Committee, pending referral to a policy committee. It did pass in late May by a vote of 57 to 16, and we have not taken a position as a groundwater authority on this piece of legislation at this time. Another bill that is pending is AB 2469 by Assemblymember Pappen. This deals with water use disclosures. It also does have an impact on local planning authorities because it prohibits a local planning authority from approving a discretionary or ministerial permit unless specific conditions were met. The previous version of this bill actually gave planning authority to the Department of Water Resources, saying that the Department of Water Resources would have to approve the use and ensure its compliance with Sigma before the local planning authority could issue a permit, and that there was specific prohibitions against data center development in critically overdrafted groundwater basins. That bill did pass the assembly. The prohibitions against CODs has been removed. The DWR Planning Authority has also been removed. It also is pending in the Senate Rules Committee for referral to a policy committee, and we have not taken a public policy or a public position on the bill at this point in time. One thing to note about AB 2469 is that it is strongly opposed unless amended by the California League of Cities and California State Association of Counties. This is primarily due to its impact on local planning authorities. The two associations that represent our states, cities, and counties have taken the position that there should be no additional authorities placed or requirements placed upon a planning agency as they look at a data center, and that sufficient rules and statutes exist that allow for the county to require reporting of a data center to a groundwater sustainability agency. I think there's some discussion and some confusion regarding that latter portion of the statement, but that is their current position at this particular time. The three counties that make up our groundwater authority, the JPA of the groundwater authority, have not taken an individual position on AB 2469 at this point in time. Only the League and the California State Association of Counties have taken that position. AB 2619 deals specifically with water resources and is pretty much a straight reporting requirement on data centers. It is opposed by much of the data center community and much of the people who are using data centers in the state of California. It also has passed the Assembly and is pending in the Senate Rules Committee. You should be aware that there is significant throughout the United States, including within Congress and across all 50 states, regarding data centers. At the federal level, partisan politics generally is dividing how data centers are viewed. They range from relief from environmental laws all the way to year-long prohibitions against data center development in the United States. It is ranked at this particular point in time as one of the highest public policy debates that is going on in the United States. 1,237 pieces of legislation across 48 states and the District of Columbia are looking at data center legislation in one fashion or another. This brings you to kind of some general information that I provided to the board on what is a data center, what are the types of data centers, how they're tiered out, how they're constructed, what the size of a data center is, what their water use is, which is primarily for evaporative cooling, what is known as blowdown, which is water removed to manage mineral concentration within the cooling system, drift, which is the spray you feel of a cooling system, and then of course the domestic use. What the board may wish to consider is that additional reporting requirements for data centers will probably assist the board in developing future GSP requirements. If you have a 50 acre feet of augmented water supply requirement created by this data center, knowing that in advance and being able to react to that and plan for that is very helpful. However, I think that we should ask the board to consider any kind of an impact that would undermine the local approach and undermine planning authority of the city or the counties at this particular point. So provisions that preempt local governments from making a permitting decision or anything that would prohibit or disadvantage a critically overdrafted groundwater basin, regardless of how it planned for the water use in that basin, those may be considerations that the board wants to take in before taking a position of support of one piece of legislation or another. One of the options that you can do is to direct Capital Corps to begin working with the stakeholders on this. We have been sort of on the fringes working with them already on various amendments, and this includes the League and CSAC on their concerns and moving forward on a bill that would be more limited in its approach and reporting requirements. I do not believe that the Groundwater Authority wants to be in the position of taking on any planning organization at this particular point where you have approval or denial. It is more simply being able to plan for the groundwater sustainability of the region, and also being able to plan for the infrastructure costs and the potential of new augmented water supplies that are required by any development within a COD. So those are the considerations. From there, I will answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Michael. We'll bring it back to the board for any questions for Capital Corps.
I have a question. Thank you for that briefing. On 2469, you mentioned that it had been modified to remove a clause that referred to critically overdrafted basins. Do you have any insights as to why that was done?
That was done at the behest of the opposition from the League of Cities and from the California State Association of Counties as part of an ongoing negotiation in that bill. And it did not completely remove all of their opposition. However, my understanding is that DWR also weighed in and said this would put us in the position of being a planning agency, and that is not within our charter as a department within the state. So they even had raised some concerns over the bill, which may have developed a governor's veto for it.
Thank you.
So if I understand that, then that took out some of the local control of the bill?
It still has some local control issues within the bill because it prohibits a city or a county from approving a discretionary permit that would result in construction unless specific requirements are met. So it puts the police power, it makes a greater police power, it gives additional requirements for the cities or the counties to meet before they could put in a data center in any kind of overdrafted basin, is how 2469 reads. And it may actually go beyond that to be a statewide issue. So it may go beyond any SGMA controlled basins to all groundwater basins within the state.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll bring it to the floor for public comment. I may go back and forth between the floor and the phone so that we don't have folks on the phones waiting too terribly long. But we'll start with the floor. So
Nina's having tech issues, but I have paper like in the olden days, so I'll go first. First off, Mr. McKinney, I thought your report was delightful, except for the last sentence, which I did not like at all. But I do want to mention, I think there's enough beneficial in AB 2469, it's weird talking to a blank screen, to make that worthwhile. I would have liked to see that critically overdrafted basin issue, instead of just being removed, maybe have been threaded a little bit, thread the needle, to be able to require a little bit stricter requirements from data centers that are trying to be proposed in basins like ours. But I do think that there are 4 really important pieces of what was provided in the report to the board that really are what the community is asking for the board to provide in a comment letter to the CEC. So I just want to highlight those briefly, and I don't have page numbers, unfortunately, so you're just going to have to hope and trust you can find this later. But the first one is, I just think that the point that we are pumping more than is going back into the basin is almost, not entirely, but almost universally agreed upon. And it is something that needs to be taken into consideration by Sacramento, because that does add a significant adverse environmental impact. The second one is, we're all waiting with bated breath on the results of this adjudication and then whatever comes next. And so we do need someone to have that voice to say to Sacramento, like, hey, nobody can determine that the requirements of SB 610 with a 20-year water supply can be met, because we don't even know what's going to happen in 2 months. So I think that's really the second point that should be submitted in comments informally to the CEC by the Groundwater Authority. The third one is, I really liked the point right above the state public policy, which I was less interested in, which is that it is so essential that proposed development provide complete and accurate assessment of water demand so impacts can be properly evaluated and addressed as necessary. And that's really the heart of what we're asking for in this application process. The challenge is, what we're getting from the developer is not even the right basin in most of it. And so we also have a lot of concerns about the climate adjustments. I've kind of jokingly said this, I shouldn't say it in a formal meeting, but it is. But the 50 acre feet is kind of a trust me bro number. Like, there's no real weight to it. There's no specifications, there's no examples we can point to. We look for industry standards that are comparable. They don't happen in places like here. So we really think that that needs to be an independent climate adjusted water supply assessment provided with example specifications and obviously the correct basin mentioned throughout. And then the last thing, and this is one place where I really think the Groundwater Authority has technical expertise that can help us in this, which is we strongly feel that the data center's water supply assessment is insufficient, but we don't have the technical experts to be able to pull in the information that we need to be able to determine that. But just like you were able to get Capital Core Group to be able to provide the information that was so helpful in this report, having some of the technical expertise that the GA has, look at the water supply assessment, would be incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy Decker. My first comment is the woman before me has spoken 3 times and we have no idea who she is. What I have gotten out of your evaluation of this process is that in reality, the only place for people to go who feel that this data center will destroy this community as well as the Inyokern community is perhaps the County Board of Supervisors. So my question to you, Mr. Phillips, is this data center going to be put on the County Board of Supervisors agenda in the future? And if not, do you not think it should be? I spoke before you last month, and I actually brought you some paperwork about data centers. And in the intervening month, we have learned more and more negative things about data centers. Not all of them have to do with water. For instance, the Reno area is served by Sierra Pacific, who, because of the 4 data centers between Fernley and Sparks, has informed all of the residents who live on the California side of Lake Tahoe that as of March of next year, they will have to find another electric provider. The issue here also is the developer apparently has a habit of developing in phases and does not tell the true story. I brought this up last month. Mr. Hall got up and said for any project, the total project and EIR had to be done. Are you going to push for that as a board? Are you going to write a letter to the CEC? These are questions I'd like answered.
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. So I have to wear 2 different hats, obviously as a GA member and then as a county supervisor. So here, we can discuss the water concerns as the Groundwater Authority, absolutely. But as a county supervisor, our land use role, it's one of 3 different roles that the supervisors have, and that's a quasi-judicial role. So we can't, any developer like the data center, when they come and they make an application to the county, we have to consider that just like a judge would in a court case. So we can't do anything to prejudice ourselves before making that decision one way or another. So I am hampered from making comments about that as a supervisor or doing anything for or against it until the applicant brings that to the board. And then once it does come to the board, which it will have to eventually, then at that time, I have to consider information from both the applicant and from the opposition and take it all at one time and weigh that out. So if I do anything to advocate for it or against it beforehand, I would not be able to participate in any kind of decision once that does come before the board.
So did I hear you correctly that even though it will go before the CEC, it still has to come to the Board of Supervisors for approval?
That's my understanding. Yeah, I've talked to the Planning Commission about it, and I don't believe they have a completed application to the board, but I do believe that's in the process. And once that is completed, then it will come to the board. I don't know what time. I mean, it would be sometime this year, I would imagine. It would probably be later this year at some point it'll come to the board.
So it would come to the board, here's a question. Since there is controversy about it, not only this data center, but other data centers, would it not come to the board as a public hearing?
Yes, at that time, there will be a public hearing and a chance for opposition to provide comments, as well as the applicants, and at that time, we'll have to consider both arguments and work through that process.
And my other comment in closing is, I believe this board needs to defend the water that is left in our groundwater basin. And in order to do that, you are going to have to pursue all those proposed legislations that will defend and protect groundwater basins from such intensive water use. After all, you wouldn't really like to have a rice paddy sprouting up north.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nina Sanseri. Thank you, Board, for your time. Thank you, Commander, for your service to our country. So I took FAQs off the Inyo Kern data center website, and they espouse 49 acre-feet per year and a closed-loop hybrid cooling system. And I was curious about how that translated to a desert climate, because you may have this system in Tennessee where two of my grown children live, and there's data centers popping up there. But how does that translate to a desert climate? So what a closed-loop hybrid cooling system means is it's not a single standard technology. It's a combination of two separate ideas. Hybrid cooling means mixing cooling methods. It combines multiple cooling techniques, air, liquid, or dry, plus evaporative. It switches between them depending on temperatures and load. Closed-loop cooling is how the fluid is handled. It uses a sealed system where water or coolant is recirculated, and it does not rely on continuous evaporation or discharge. Put together, they are claiming a closed-loop hybrid system typically means a cooling system that combines multiple cooling methods, hybrid, where at least one part of the system uses recirculating closed-loop fluid. Based on industry descriptions, this typically involves the core setup is the closed-loop cooling inside the facility. It circulates the coolant through pipes, sort of like our car radiators. No continuous water loss. Plus hybrid features. 1, air cooling for low-density equipment. 2, dry coolers or free cooling using outside air. Or 3, optional water-assisted evaporative cooling during extreme heat. Industry explicitly notes hybrid systems often combine these two systems. Now, the critical nuance for this, even if part of the system is closed loop, the system may still include wet evaporative modes, water use during hot conditions. Hybrid systems are designed to switch modes when needed. For example, it operates mostly dry closed loop, but switches to evaporated cooling on very hot days. The result is water use can still be material even if reduced. And why developers use this phrase? From a messaging standpoint, it allows them to imply all of the following at once. It's efficient, it's low water, advanced technology, tailored for desert climate. But technically, and hear this, it does not tell you how often wet cooling is used, whether evaporative cooling is included, actual annual water consumption drivers. What is missing for CEQA regulatory implication is it fully closed loop under all conditions or only partial? Does it include evaporative cooling, adiabatic water-assisted air cooling? What percentage of operation uses? Dry mode versus wet mode? What triggers switching? And then they claim 49 acre feet per year. For a 100 megawatt data center, 49 acre feet per year is unusually low. Many facilities use 20 to 50 times that amount. The number only works if the system almost never uses water, including during 105-degree heat, which we get here in the desert, and the project hasn't shown. How is that achievable? Their disclosure and they're not being very transparent. So 49 acre feet per year equals 16 million gallons per year. That becomes 44,000 gallons per day. Compared to typical industry ranges, the typical evaporative cooled data centers use approximately 18,000 gallons per day per 1 megawatt.
Okay, if you could please
Okay.
wrap it up.
Okay, thank you. That equates not to 49 acre feet per year, as the Inyo Kern Data Center FAQ espouses. That's 2,000 acre feet per year. So I just wanted to provide this information because it's this mysterious closed loop hybrid. People should know what this was really about. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Directors, would you like any background information on sort of water use in terms of co-located facilities and tiers? What the last speaker was describing is somewhere between a tier 2 and a tier 4 data center. But water use is going to be driven by the computing that is going on within the data center. So it is not a one size fits all approach. The larger the computing exercise within it, the more computing that is going on, whether it be quantum computing, artificial intelligence computing, or something like that, will drive the heat factors up in a data center versus what is within a cloud computing or a blockchain style computing. They kind of work because it's a co-location facility. The developer does not know who's going into that facility at this particular point in time. So it'll have to be a range. I would agree with the previous speaker. 49 is at the very, very low end of what they indicate that a data center will use at a 100 megawatt facility. Those are typically anywhere from 50 to 70 on average. And most developers will give a range, especially in those co-location facilities, because they do not know what the actual use of the facility will be at the given time.
Thank you, Michael.
Good morning. Kelly Cutts, thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you, Commander, for your service to our country. So I just want to make a couple of points. One is, you better make darn sure you know how many data centers you are servicing. Marketing brochure says it currently 99 megawatts, expandability to 198 megawatts. When we've pushed on that, the CEC, I believe, asked for some clarification, so all of a sudden it went down to, oh gee, it's just a 99 megawatt, and yet it's being sold with expansion capabilities. The developer is also buying up more land around his initial site in Inyo Kern. So it begs the question, how many data centers are we ultimately really talking about? When their attorney was asked that question at the city council meeting the other night, his answer was, I'm aware of one data center application. That didn't answer the question, how many ultimately are we dealing with here? So I would implore this council to make doggone sure you know how many data centers water is being provided for, number one. Number two, no water decision should be made until the adjudication process is completed. No will serve letters should be honored, no promises should be made, period. The adjudication process needs to run its course. And the other thing I would say is, if a pipeline or any other water solution is brought in here to support this data center, the developer or any hyperscale tenant should bear the 100% cost of that infrastructure development to sustain that, and not the residents of either Inyo Kern, Ridgecrest, or Trona. And the last point I would like to make is, I would like to invite you all to look around the room and see the people who are sitting in here today. These people are here at a meeting that's 11 o'clock in the morning. And I would ask you to take a vote here at this meeting today, if at your next meeting scheduled for July 8th, you could have the meeting at 6 o'clock at night so that people who are working can attend, hear what we're able to hear, and offer you their point of view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Renee Westelusk. I live within Ridgecrest city limits. I want to bring your attention to something that was divulged at the Indian Wells Valley Water District meeting on Monday night, and it's about a Navy base. Maybe you've heard of it. The submarine base, Kings Bay Naval Submarine Base, located adjacent to Kingland, Georgia. And there are some articles on the internet, if you want to look them up, where the residents have been pushing back. And there was also an article which I could not get to because you have to subscribe to the Tribune Georgian, but it says U.S. Navy, a subtitle of the article is U.S. Navy asks for data center halt. And I did see a little blurb underneath the article, and it says, days before a landowner withdrew a zoning request that could have partially led to a data center coming to Kingsland, the commanding officer of Kings Bay Naval Submarine asked the city to halt it. So I think you should maybe look this up. It looks like we were told by David St. Amand that from his research on it that the Navy had presented adverse impacts to the operation of the base from electricity and water use, and that may have helped maybe temporarily stop it. I don't know if it's permanently stopped, but they did have some kind of result. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee.
Hello, my name is Rudy Salazar, and I live part-time in Randsburg. I'm actually one of the largest landowners in Randsburg, and I'd like to pass these to you tonight. So I want to ask a question. What if Kern County could have the best water system by world standards? Kern County, all paid for by the federal government. Nobody's tax money, out of anybody's pockets, taxpayers or anything. The DOE right now has a RFI that they put out in January, and it's called the Nuclear Life Cycle Innovative Campus. And I thought the R&B data center had to have been part of this, but it turns out I don't even think they're aware of this. And what it is that the DOE recognizing that we have this energy problem throughout the United States, a huge, we need to get going on nuclear again, if you will. And let me tell you, I'm not a big fan of nuclear energy, but we really need to get going back on this. So on this RFI that the DOE put out, one of the big components in there is an AI data centers. So they're looking for campuses for states. They put an RFI out and 28 states responded. Out of the 28, 12 were possible contenders, but not really. 8 had political pathways to make it happen. Utah jumped right into it and said, hey, let's get on this bandwagon and get it going. There's a lot of opportunity in there, a lot of money that the state of California could get if they were to look into getting involved in these innovative campuses. And what this innovative campuses does, though, it does have a state start developing or get into developing the advanced nuclear reactors, sites for that.
Sir, I'm speaking with you. I have a question as to what this has to do with the data center.
Well, the data center.
Public comment on the data center.
Right, it could be that the data center needs to be part of this Nuclear Life Cycle Innovative Campus RFI, Request for Information. California needs a seat at the table. Kern County could help get us a seat at the table saying, hey, maybe we need to get behind this as a community, as a county, and use a data center. It's one of the components to this RFI is a data center, an AI data center. So all I'm saying is that I believe we're missing an opportunity. The thing is that not only do we have an opportunity, we have the inventory of what this also has to do with spent fuel.
Okay, if you would, go ahead and wrap it up here quick, because I don't see the correlation with the public comment on the data center itself, which is what we're discussing right now under public comment.
Okay, well, I do, and I think it was a part of it, but I get it, so I'll just end it there then. Thank you.
Thank you.
More public comment?
Public comment, yes, we're still in public comment.
Hi, this will be short. I just want to clarify, this gentleman over here mentioned 7,650 square feet, acre feet of water, and that it was settled science, and that is in dispute. It is doubled that at 14,300 square feet of acre feet of water, and it was relating to the data center. I'll let the experts decide on that, but I don't want to use that information that was provided for the impact on what the decisions are for the data center. So this is basically what I want to share. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Wes Katzenstein, domestic well owner and member of the Policy Advisory Committee. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. McKinney for their ongoing excellent support. I think it's been well worth the money we've spent on them. And it may be that there was a suggestion made that perhaps one role of the Groundwater Authority here could be to actually do the technical assessment of trade-offs that might relate to a data center. And of course, one way to do that would be to run the model, a groundwater model, under certain scenarios that might represent what a data center might require for water. And just to repeat what Stephen Johnson said earlier, the groundwater model has been developed by the Groundwater Authority, has been, I would use the word validated. They've used the word calibrated. They went back decades, looked at well levels, monitored pumping, and predicted within, I think, less than 5% accuracy of current well levels. So in my mind, that validates the model. It's my understanding that Dr. Kincaid, who talked about, apparently had access to the competing groundwater model and competing 14,000 acre feet, and ran the 14,000 acre feet through the competing groundwater model and discovered a 20-foot deep lake on the north ranges of the base. So I think the model needs work, and they may want to consider revising their recharge amount. But my main comment is that perhaps it does make sense to try to find a role that the Groundwater Authority might play in evaluating the impact of a data center, and perhaps you could even find a funding source for that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I clarify a couple things just real quick while we're on them? So I think a previous speaker characterized my statement as saying that the safe yield of 7650 is settled science. I just want to make it clear, I want to amplify something I said initially, which is both the safe yield determination and the GSP itself is a living document. And as I mentioned, we're continuously, I think every month, getting new data and submitting it. And we have an ongoing responsibility to evaluate and where appropriate to modify and update the document based on the information we're getting. So I guess you could say nothing is settled. That's not really the intent of the process. The process is an ongoing investigation. And we hope that over time, our numbers get more accurate as we get more data, and we have a lot of confidence that we had the most accurate number we could set up at the time. We think that the data we've collected since then has supported that, but I don't want to give you the impression that we got this set in stone and that's the way it is. This is a scientific inquiry. The second thing I want to point out is that somebody suggested that maybe we should not continue to implement Sigma while the adjudication was happening. I just want to make it clear, we have a separate independent legal duty to continue to implement Sigma regardless of the adjudication. And It is the opinion of attorneys for the state that I've talked to that the adjudication can't have any impact on our implementation of the Sigma process. So ultimately, it may not have any effect on that. We will have to move forward. We have to make local decisions about what water is available, and we have to implement whatever projects we can come up with to try to augment our supplies so we have as much water as we can get. That's what our obligations are. The last point is, I just want to make it clear again, I think everybody understands this, but we don't have, despite everything I just said, we don't have powers to approve or deny this project. We just have the ability to provide information to the people that will be making that decision.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment too on the previous commenter, Wes Kazakhstan, that those models, I want to be clear that the Dr. Kincaid in the town hall addressed the differences in those models, and that the model, the GA's model, the DRI model is not what he's referring to. He's referring to the model presented by the water district and showing a lake out on the 20-foot lake out on the lake bed. Water leakage from the aqueduct. These issues and faults were addressed very clearly with Dr. Kincaid. So anyone that would like to see that, you could go back and research that data. And it was I agree that earlier comments about his presentation being at the end may have been missed by a lot of folks, but pretty important data that was addressed in the differences of those models, but to be clear, that was the Water District's model, so.
And if I could address something, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
regarding, Wes, your suggestion that we could provide modeling to the DWR, the Groundwater Authority would need a significant amount of information from the developer in order to do any type of calculation on behalf of anybody. There's nothing in the law that requires that at this particular point, or even requires the developer to report that information to the Groundwater Authority, or requires Inyokern CSD to provide that information to the Groundwater Authority. The Groundwater Authority's limitation is literally after the data center is online and pumping comes up, and then the Groundwater Authority has to solve for the groundwater sustainability problem. That's literally the limitation on the authority at this particular point. I don't even think the developer can give you, given it is a co-location facility, as it's described in the application, that he could give you an accurate estimate. It would have to be a range at this point, because he does not know the computing uses of the tenants that will be in the co-location facility.
Thank you, Michael.
Wes Katzenstein again. I concur with several things that have been said here. The 7650 and the current model is a living model and a living estimate that will change over time as we learn more. It's my understanding. And secondly, I do think perhaps we might come up with an estimate, estimated ranges of water uses that might be expected, and we could possibly evaluate with using the model a variety of possible water uses, and perhaps recommend that the county, whoever approves this, put limitations on future use of water based on parameters that we might examine with the model. So, and I agree with what you said, Scott, that yes, I want to be very clear which model provided the 20-foot deep lake on the North Ranges. It was not the Groundwater Authority's model.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, Commander. I wanted to address the issue about the Kern Local Agency Formation Commission. They're meeting on June 17th in Bakersfield, along with your recommendations today.
Excuse me, could you bring the mic down a little bit closer? You got to speak right into these things for them to.
Sorry, I don't
heard.
publicly speak. Is that better?
Yes.
I know that the Kern County Local Agency Formation Commission is meeting June 17th in Bakersfield this month, and they coordinate a lot of the municipal growth in the area. and they kind of support the groundwater authority also. If we had enough water and electric, I'm sure we wouldn't have a problem right now meeting about the data center because we'd have enough. And I know something called SkyTIM came in. It's an airborne electromagnetic survey and AEM surveying. They surveyed over 500 miles for both the city, the county, and the base. And they used a STEM 3M system in November of 2017. And they had a lot of results that they presented with the guidelines. They were just guidelines and suggestions for sustainability. For aquifer and recharge. And I would like to see growth in the area like the data center if we can mitigate the water and the electric, where it doesn't fall on any of the citizens. I have a solution. I know a lot of people come up with complaining, but I want to talk about a small glorified sprinkler system. I'd like to see a municipality created for the ocean municipality, where we take our whole western coastline and we start drawing off of it and put in like a large sprinkler system right into the aquifers. And they can desalinize it. The ocean water is already rising. It would mitigate two problems. You'd have to get through NOAA, but the Oceanic Society. But it would mitigate two problems. It would lower the ocean's level. At the same time, it would bring water in our neighboring states like Nevada, who is pumping under the Colorado River. In 2015, they put a huge tunnel in. They sunk billions, and they would hook into our system. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. I was told by another government agency that it was possible for the IWVGA to limit the amount of pumping for like the data center.
What was the question?
Yeah.
That the GA could limit pumping, right?
Yeah,
Right.
the GA
amount
has
of
the power
pumping.
to do that. We do not currently have a GSP, because our GSP is directed to producing supplemental water, it is not currently directed towards curtailing pumping. However, we have gotten comments from the Department of Water Resources about whether or not we should have that as a consideration, which we've been, because we're focusing on, I think what I would consider to be more positive directions for the time being, that we've not added that to the GSP, but that is on the table, yes.
So it would be like limiting pumping?
Ultimately, we have to limit pumping in 2040 by the water available. And so, when we get to that point, we will have to, that will be one of the things we would have to consider.
Okay. Can you stop someone from pumping?
Yes,
Now?
with the proper findings, yes.
Okay. And then the only other thing that I can think of, though.
But understand, we would also have to apply that rule. If you're talking about the data center specifically, it would have to be the same rule for everybody. Because the concern would be the water usage, not the use to which the water is being put to, which I understand is of tremendous concern to everybody in the room, but that's outside of our purview. We have to protect the water resource.
And you don't have anything to do with if the water gets contaminated from the data center?
We,
That falls
water
under-
quality is also under our purview, yes.
Because there have been questions at other venues I've been going to that have brought that up about possible water contamination.
If
Coming-
water use is causing contamination, then that would fall under our, would be of concern to the Groundwater Authority, yes.
And then the only other thing I can think of what is you can require them to register their well if they have their own well, and they have to have it metered, and then they would have to pay extraction fee and replenishment fee.
Those are all already required, correct.
Okay.
So that would be required if they were there. We would be getting reports on their water use.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tammy Boyer, and I would like to let everybody be aware that we have a grassroots organization called Taxpayers for Accountability for Our Groundwater, and we are looking for fiscal accountability and transparency, and anybody that wants to go on our Facebook page can do that. And our group has 3 asks. We would like to direct staff to move the next meeting on July 8th to 6 p.m. We would like to direct staff to prepare a comment letter to the CEC to review and approval at the next meeting, summarizing the concerns from the staff report, understanding that you can't take a position for or opposed, but just the concerns at hand. Direct staff to review the project's water supply assessment for technical concerns related to groundwater use and a realistic local water use estimates. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move to the phones. Caller, go ahead.
A lot of the municipal growth in the area, and kind of support the municipal authority of the
Caller, just a reminder, if you can hear me in the phone, to mute your streaming device. There's a 20-second delay.
Okay, it's off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, do we have any more callers on the phone?
Yes, one more. Mike Senat. First question for Supervisor Peters. Is there a rezoning or a recategorizing of data centers so that it doesn't fall into the catch-all of manufacturing or whatever the zoning is right now? My preference would be no data center, and rezoning might be the way to make that possible. Okay, so I have 3 other thoughts that I want to throw out. First, but I want to thank Mr. Lemieux and Mr. McKinney. I think you've really done a good service today with the information and the way you're presenting it. I heard Mr. McKinney mention AB 1413 is still alive. I would ask that the city retract their support, which is shown in the bills still as supporters, because they never had the opportunity to put it on an agenda, either in closed or open session, as we know. So I would ask you to take care of that little loose end, and still object to that. I don't know that it will ever see the light of day again. You say it's live, but we'll see. Regarding the phase 3 comprehensive adjudication trial, which will be on allocations of the pie, as they like to refer to it, how is this going to and how's this going to affect the allocation and the mechanism that you're using with the allocations?
Okay, I don't see how this relates to the data center public comment. So if you can keep it to the data center.
Excuse me, I'm getting to that.
Well, I would say get to it.
Well, excuse me. The data center is going to be allocated water. It's pure and simple. So how does this play into the phase 3 trial, where we're dividing up the pieces of the pie, and now we've got this data center that's coming in, could be using 3,000 acre feet. And what we're doing with this whole sustainability plan is effectively putting the farmers out of business. So, and they're not paying the replenishment fee. The only people that are paying the replenishment fee are the residents and ratepayers of the district. So what I would like to hear you explain is how this is going to affect both the allocations, phase 3, and the replenishment fee. And then finally, and I'd love to throw this out there just to, never mind, I won't. I'll call it there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Council.
Yeah, I can answer that pretty directly. So phase 3 is groundwater rights. That's what he's referring to with allocations. Those can be decided any number of ways, but typically it's historical use. The data center has no historical use. So it seems like that is an uphill battle if they're trying to establish their own right. But my understanding is they've got a will serve letter from the Inyo Kern CSD. So it really falls on Inyo Kern CSD to get the rights necessary to support the deliveries. If the question also was about replenishment fee, this would be covered by the need for a replenishment fee, in my view. So this is so it presumably, if this were to proceed, we would require that that sufficient monies are paid to cover the data center's share of bringing imported water in to cover their use. That would certainly be something we would be recommending to the board.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Jade Zimmerman. It's been a long time since I've been in front of this group. Last time I was here, I had a different last name, so really interested hearing all the updates coming back. But wanted to bring up, I wanted to share some math magic, actually. So taking the Inyo Kern data center's reported water use of 49 acre feet, and combining that with information about binary cooling systems, as a speaker noted earlier, it varies. It's not just one number or one efficiency percentage. A hybrid cooling system can range between 40 and 90% efficient, right? That's a wide range. So effectively, you could get as much as double that reported amount. So a 49, doing a little bit of math, right? 49 acre feet would amount to about 110 acre feet on the less efficient scale. And that's based on what they're reporting. And that's the concern I have, is we're going off numbers that they're reporting. And I would urge this group here to direct staff to, if it's possible, to look into what the impacts actually are. What we need to know exactly how much they're going to pull. And that's what my comment is about, that we need to have the transparency from a actual scientific review of what is the actual impact on our water reservoir going to be from this data center, as well as any future development that this particular developer might have. So I would urge you to also submit a comment to the CEC summarizing these concerns and explicitly expressing the concerns to the water, obviously the groundwater impacts of this data center, and urging that we need impartial scientific review of the water usage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Nina Sunseri again. Thank you earlier for the gentleman educating about how data usage is and how much it draws and ultimately affects the water. So the Uptime Institute originally defined the Tier 3 data center standard. However, for the RB Inyo Kern data center project, the Tier 3 for design baseline was determined by the project's developer, R&L Capital. It was determined by them as outlined in their application for the CEC. So the fox taking care of the hen house, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further public comment from the floor? Okay, seeing none, we'll go back to the phones. Any public comment from the phones? Okay, hearing none. want to thank everybody for participating and coming today and giving us your concerns and points of view, and I can assure you it's well taken. And so with that, we will now move on to, or bring it back to the board for any other further comment or suggestions.
I've got a couple thoughts. I wanted to thank the staff. Nice report in the board packet regarding data centers. I hope that everybody in the audience was able to get that information. We also provided a report. George Kroll had a report during our water district meeting this week as we attempted to get, our head around this and understand what our role might be. And we're continuing to work that. We will continue to keep you guys advised of information we discover. I think we shared that, this isn't in the district boundaries. It could possibly be if we consolidate, if the state requires us to consolidate with CSD. It could be in our boundaries in the future, which might change. But right now, it's not. So we're a little bit hampered of what we can do. But information like this is very important. I'm glad that you pulled that together for us, April. And I too really excited to see all you guys show up. This is nice. Nice to see the communities involved and interested in an important topic. I hope we can satisfy your expectations of us.
Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, I've got one comment. Going back, this question is from Mike McKinney. Going back to was it AB 2469, I understand the pushback from CSAC and wanting to retain local control for counties as far as the local permitting stuff, but I think it was mentioned that one of the comments was that counties could implement their own restrictions or conditions, I guess, that are being asked for in this for the state to impose. Is there any way that we could maybe just get a memo drafted for the county, just as far as updating them on what's being proposed to the state and what the county's options maybe are for creating conditions for these types of projects, just for the county to have that information?
Absolutely. We can send a letter from the Groundwater Authority over to, or a memo over to the county's legislative person to let them know what our discussions have been with CSAC and the league. The CSAC and the league have taken the position that the county should have the authority to put any provision in that it may want to put in, and that it can require reporting provisions as well under existing law. Again, I don't know that interpretation is fully accurate at this point. There's some question about that and some question about how that's really applied in a practical setting based upon the difference of what would be an environmental review done by CEC under the small power plant exemption versus just a conditional use permit done by the county. So it is, I think it's how they're going about it as well. There has been some talk, and I did omit this, about forum shopping by data center developers to the CEC to get their environmental review through the SPPE process rather than bringing it to the county. That is a state law that has to be modified in state law at this point in time. So the county, we are in discussions, or I have heard discussions with the county on that.
Okay, I appreciate it. I'm not,
Absolutely.
I got to be careful again, just trying not to advocate one way or another, because I have to kind of walk a tightrope between the supervisor board and the GA board, but I do think it would be beneficial for the county to have that information and proceed accordingly as these topics come up. So thank you.
I'll keep it factual.
So
Appreciate it.
I think that information would benefit the GA. I would like to hear back from the board. I, for one, am kind of leaning toward authorizing Capitol Corps and Michael McKinney to pursue legislation, the different bills that are presently out on the table, and look further into it as to any concerns or benefits that would provided to the GA, so I'm anxious to hear back from the other board members as to your position on it.
Agree.
I would say just, again, having to walk a tightrope as county supervisor without trying to put myself in a position where I have to recuse myself at a later meeting, because I should be really careful about what I vote on as far as positioning on these bills. So I would probably recuse myself from taking a stance on legislation one way or another, but I do agree with some of the comments that I don't think it hurts sending a letter from the board, from the GA to the CEC, just outlining what our concerns are and updating them on the condition of the basin and what we could do in that regard.
I'll just say that your concerns are very valid, and the legal parameters that we have to tightrope walk through are real, and I think the public needs to understand that too, that there's legal ramifications, parameters that we have to abide and follow through or follow by, and that includes the GA, the city, we're dealing with on the city side. Now we have the GA. Chair Peters is, wearing the two hats and has to abide by it on the county side. So bear with us on that aspect of it. But yes, I think those are valid concerns, and recusing yourself would be perfectly,
The board may wish to consider, Mr. Chairman, not only sending a letter into CEC just to provide informational, but also just so that it is part of the entire proceeding to seek intervener status. That does not mean that we need to intervene in every section of the CEC's process, looking at the energy side of the house or the solar power plant that is attached to this. It would simply mean that we would gain access to the docket, to the commission's proceedings in a more formal manner, and then would be placed on all of the notifications that were done by any of the parties in relation to the docket.
So do we have any other further questions or comments from the board?
I just want to clarify something. I heard that Chair Heyman, you were suggesting taking a position in favor of the legislation, and I heard Member Peters say, Supervisor Peters say that he would want to abstain. It isn't, under the rules of our voting, I just want to remind you that it is possible for Director Peters to abstain if the representative from the Water District is in favor of the legislation, that we could take a position in favor of legislation without his participation.
Yeah, and that would just be my preference. I'm okay with supporting a letter to the CEC, just outlining, very factually what our conditions are here in the basin and making them aware. But as far as taking a stance on legislation, I would just recuse myself from that conversation.
Right, so I think it would be best to separate the motions. So we'll do one for having Capital Corps support. They're supporting Capital Corps' efforts in pursuing legislation. And then we can do a separate one authorizing Capital Corps to send a memo from the GA to the Board of Supervisors addressing the legislative concerns. And thank you. And then there was an additional motion to submit concerns to CEC, which if Supervisor Peters is comfortable voting on the letter as well as the CEC comments, you could do that motion together. But I will leave that up to Supervisor Peters' discretion.
I'll just say I'll make a motion to send a letter updating the CEC with the condition of our basin here, and also to ask staff, make a referral to staff to send an update just on some of the options available to the county or considerations under AB 2469. I would move that, if there's a second.
I would second that motion. That's about as far as I'd be able to move for the Water District as well. If it came to legislation changes and engagement, I would need to take that back to my board to let them know exactly what we're supporting.
Okay, so with that additional information, then would it be sufficient then to just leave it where we're at?
Yes, but I would just recommend, we got a motion and a second for the Kern County Board of Supervisors memo from Capital Corps, as well as the CEC comment submission. I just needed an all eye on that.
No,
No.
not from me.
That would be a separate item.
Okay, so
Right now, you are voting to approve the Capital Corps memo and CEC comment submissions from from the GA board.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And any other motions after that would now need to go through the process as well.
Yeah, and if there's going to be any further discussion, just let me know, and I'll just step out just as part of the recusal and let that discussion proceed.
Okay, so we've heard from the Water District that there's no interest in moving any further on future legislative inquiry.
Not exactly what I meant. What I meant was I can't vote on proposed legislation changes without seeing the proposed legislation changes in front of me, and I would need to take that to my board to get consensus from the board before we would have an official position.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a recommendation?
Yes, please.
If the board would so direct Capital Corps to engage with the stakeholders regarding data center legislation as it pertains to water, in other words, the three bills that you are here before you, you can do so without taking a position on any of this legislation as an interested party. We would simply be in the room at that time and would be listening to the debate as it is going on with regard to amendments to AB 2469 or 1577. We can engage with the members, but indicate that Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority has not taken a formal position. We would then bring back that data, including any amendments that might be proposed to the staff, and seek some staff direction. The issue between board meetings of taking a position is, of course, legislation is going to move very quickly, and these bills will either be signed by the governor or die by the end of September, because the legislature is going to go into adjournment at that time.
And so that would keep us deeply engaged, but then if we were to make a decision on whether we wanted to be an active participant in one of the bills, then you would bring that back to us, and then we would make a decision from a board standing whether or not we wanted to take a formal position on a bill.
Yeah, but it seems like as a practical matter, that would probably need to happen at the next meeting, or it would be too late to be doing anything. So I trust then that information could be given to the water district so that Member Boyd could have the direction he needs in order to vote on those items at the next meeting.
Okay.
I could see that as a way of advancing the ball on this.
Okay.
We would meet again before you guys meet, so there would be an opportunity.
And so Capital Corps could provide information to the Water District before their next meeting so that they could make a decision as to whether they want to.
As the information that I am developing is public data, isn't it, I don't believe that it falls within a Brown Act violation to just provide that public data through April to the various board members as it comes up. It would mean that you can't make a decision on that, but at least you would have the information real time as it was going through.
Yeah, there's nothing in the Brown Act that would prevent information flowing one way to individual board members. They just can't talk about it or act on it, except for at meetings like this one.
Exactly, and then that's public data. I mean, the moment a proposed amendment is put into legislative council, it is a public document, and I am aware of discussions where I could get amendments and discussions regarding amendments that have not gone into legislative council, but at least we would have real-time information that the board could then consider in July. The state legislature is in recess during the month of July. They come back for a very short period in August, and these bills will need to be on the governor's desk by August 31st.
Okay, then from the board, we would need to give direction to April to provide that information.
Yes, so it sounds to me, and Council Lemieux can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like your motion would be to approve Capitol Corps' legislative engagement in a sense that they're staying involved. As we all know, this changes by the day. So I
Actually, can I throw in I'm concerned about the time, thinking about this some more. So maybe a creative solution to this particular conundrum to get us if there is a desire to get become involved at a time when it's still meaningful. And if it is possible to approve our advocacy, but subject to review and approval by the Water District Board. So in other words, once the Water District Board has their meeting, if they say, yes, we're in, then we don't have to come back and have another meeting. We just go ahead at that point. You follow me?
Would you be?
Yep, I'm good with that, and I know the times are critical. We are meeting tomorrow, and we're also meeting in our normally scheduled July meeting, I think is the 13th.
Yeah, which will be after, I just wanted to point out, after the GA's meeting.
Is that after the GA? That's right?
Yeah.
Because we
Yeah, I guess
usually
so.
have it just before, so.
Maybe you could do it, I can talk to your, Jim Worth, your counsel, about whether or not this qualifies as a Nita Rose item for your agenda. It could.
It could.
Given the fact that, these bills impact local zoning, beyond just this one project, and therefore would impact, San Bernardino County, unless and until San Bernardino County takes a formal position on this, I would be inclined to abstain on any formal position on legislation.
You too?
Me as well. If, we're going against CSAC and potentially Inyo County, I would have to recuse myself at this time. I'm supporting this last one as well.
Okay, so it sounds like it's not practical to do it today. So it
Yeah.
sounds like what we need to do is set the conditions that would allow you guys to consider this at the next meeting.
Right, and maybe have an update from Capitol Corps again on this issue, on the legislative affairs.
April reminds me that we can also call a special meeting if it's necessary. So now the public gets to see how the sausage gets made all the time as we try to figure these things out.
So would there still be an action on the table for Capitol Corps to prepare information for the CEC? Was that?
I think you guys have already taken action on that. So,
Yeah, okay.
I think they asked to stay involved with the stakeholder. That's what's pending. And that's not advocacy. So I guess they'll need some direction on that. And then I think the understanding is they'll come back with information that will go to the Water District and the 3 counties. And then you guys can decide if you've got authority when we meet again in July.
Okay.
But that first part needs a motion about the stakeholder.
We'll bring back to the board for a motion.
That he wants to stay involved with it. Again, sorry, just for clarity, Mr. McKinney asked for directing him to stay involved with the stakeholder process, so he's kept abreast of developments on the legislation without advocating for a position. I don't think we've voted on that piece yet.
Okay, so we'll bring that back to the board for a motion.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I think that concludes this discussion, so, okay, very good. All right, next we are going to move on to the item number 10, Water Smart Grant Funding Opportunities. This will be with Stetson and Helena.
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board and public.
Thanks again for all your support, guys, and interest in this issue.
Can everyone hear me okay?
We can kind of hear you, Helena. Maybe just speak a little louder.
Okay, how about now?
That is better.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, a couple months ago, Capitol Corps identified 2 funding opportunities under the Bureau of Reclamation's Water Smart program. So one is the Applied Sciences Grants program, and the other is the Drought Response program. And so staff have evaluated the GA's eligibility under these grants for some of our projects to fill data gaps that were identified in the 2020 GSP. The Applied Sciences Grants Program, this provides funding to support development of tools and information that improve water management decisions. Some eligible projects include modeling enhancements, hydrologic data collection and analysis, forecasting tools, and incorporating new data sets. The program has 2 application windows. The first round of applications will be due July of this year, and then the second round is due in April of 2027. So selected applicants could be awarded up to $400,000 with a 50% non-federal cost share requirement under this grant. And then this grant also allows for multiple applications with different project scopes to be submitted. Next is the Drought Response Program, which provides funding for drought resiliency and contingency planning projects. This program has 2 categories with different award amounts. The first category includes infrastructure projects to improve drought resiliency, which may be awarded up to $1.5 million with a 50% non-federal cost share requirement as well. And then the second category includes water management and planning projects, which may be awarded up to $500,000 with a 50% non-federal cost share requirement as well. So attached to your staff report, you'll find a technical memorandum that has evaluated the data gaps and potential projects to fill those data gaps. And staff have identified 3 priority projects that would be eligible under the Applied Sciences Grant. These projects include the replacement of the Inyo and bucket wells and a shallow seismic survey. So the Inyo well has been a monitoring well in the southwest area of the basin, and it's been monitoring groundwater levels since 1940s. And it's located near the Water District's southwest well field. And essentially replacing the well will allow continued monitoring of groundwater levels in this area. The bucket well is located in the southeast area of the basin, and it's sort of located near the Rademacher Consolidation Project that we're in the process of completing. And this well has gone intermittently dry, so similar to the Inyo well, we'd like to continue monitoring groundwater levels in the area and get that replaced. Lastly, a shallow well seismic survey is proposed for the Rose Valley area of the basin. And this survey would improve definition of bedrock surface and help us get better estimates of groundwater subflow from Rose Valley. So in terms of fiscal impact, under the Applied Sciences Grant, I had noted that you can submit multiple applications. So if we were to submit 2 separate applications, one for replacement of the Inyo and the bucket well, and a separate one for just the shallow seismic survey, the replacement of the Inyo and bucket well, that would be estimated at around $765,000, which would require a non-federal 50% cost share of $382,500. The shallow seismic survey in the Rose Valley area, that's estimated to be $520,000, which would require a non-federal 50% cost share of $260,000. So both of these cost estimates include staff oversight and grant admin costs, which would both be eligible for reimbursement under the grants. And then I'll also highlight that the cost share requirements would very likely be required in 2027, and so that could be budgeted for fiscal year 2027. So staff recommend the board consider submission of the shallow seismic survey, estimated to be $520,000, and the Inyo well and bucket well replacement, estimated to be $765,000, as 2 separate applications under the WaterSmart Applied Sciences Grant. And I'm open for any questions.
This is Steve. One quick question. I think we talked about, tell me if I'm wrong here, that if we do apply for it and we do get the grant, which requires this 50% match by the authority, we could decline at that time if we decided we didn't have the funding for it or weren't able to budget for it. We could decline even if we were selected. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
We could apply for it, and should we be selected for award, we could decline at that time.
Based on a funding issue. Okay, thank you.
Helena?
What would be the total match?
Let's see.
If we're successful on all of those?
It's over 500,000, I think it's.
That would be 642,500.
Okay, thank you.
As the match.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Helena, do you know about when we would get notification of approval for the grants?
Oh, at this time, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure, McKinney, if you are aware at the top of your head.
I can give you some general estimates of how the grant process would work. We would be applying in July. At the best, it would take them 4 months to review all of the grant applications. It will take another 2 to 3 months to put together the funding request packets. You are looking at into January 2027 at the very earliest. I would guess that you would be well into 2027 is really the more accurate estimate. Anytime we look at federal funding of any sort, you can pretty much project that you will not receive any federal funding or any agreement for reimbursement until a year later, after you have been accepted. So you could see funding, you could have a reimbursement agreement done as early as March of 2027, and as late as into 2028.
What would be the period of performance if we were successful in getting these grants?
Typically, grants have to be completed and funds have to be expended within 18 months of project start. Otherwise, they are subject to what we call clawback. That's term of art by the United States Congress, and the funds would be clawed back away from the grant application. So you have a period of about 18 months usually to complete a project.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll bring it to the floor for public comment.
Yes, I need clarification. Renee Westelusk, I'm confused about the 50% match on each of these.
Renee, let me see if I can help there.
Okay.
So the grant requires that the total project costs, let's say the total project cost is $500,000 for a project. What that would mean is that the grant would be subject to the federal share of $250,000, and the applicant would be required to come up with $250,000. Whether that be from local funds or from other state funds is usually pretty fungible, but essentially means that the Groundwater Authority will be on the hook for 50% of the cost requirements as the non-federal share.
Okay. I believe she gave a total of, we'd have to come up with 642,000 total for all three well projects in matching funds.
Yes, 642,500.
So is the first well, because I was, like on the first well, in your well, it says the cost to replace the in your well is $415,000. So half of that would be like $207,500.
Yes. So the proposal is, so under the Applied Sciences grant, you can submit multiple applications, assuming that the project scopes are different. And because we're proposing a replacement of a well, I think we could put together in-year well and bucket well into one application. So the total cost for that would be $765,000, which would require a cost share of $382,500.
Okay, and then you add the last well, which is 250 plus like 260. That's how you came up with the 642?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other public comment from the floor? Do we have any public comment on the phones? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for any further comment or a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next we'll move to the Water Resources Manager's report, and that will be with Stetson.
Yep. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is Steve Johnson. It's good to be there. I echo the comments made. It's great to see participation, and if you decide to have it at an evening meeting, we'll certainly make ourselves available for it if that's what the board decides. So, but it's good to have participation. Really helps a lot. We've been going a while. I'm going to try to make this brief. The written report is part of the packet, so you have that information. I'll just hit some of the highlights, which I normally do. The grant funding update for the SIGMA implementation round 1 funding. We've got 3 invoices out. We're waiting a payment on all 3. Generally, they've been approved. We're just waiting payment. It's a little bit over $1 million total, so that's good news. We've got some money coming in from the state. We haven't had a problem in the past, so I don't expect a problem here. Under our Urban Community Drought Relief Program, we were awarded about almost $3.4 million. This is working on consolidation. I'll let you know that the Rademacher consolidation work is proceeding. Phase 1 is done. We want to thank the Water District for working closely together and getting that project done. We appreciate the ability to do that. Clearly, funds like these are important for the community, and the Groundwater Authority does not have the ability to do these types of consolidations. So it was essential that we work closely with the Water District and get it done. Phase 1 is done. Phase 2, the design plans are completed and are approved, awaiting easements to start construction, and we have completion of the grant work, pretty hard date, the end of this calendar year. So we're working on a schedule to get those easements acquired with the Water District. We brought in help to get that done, and hopefully we'll get that project, Phase 2, done and use up as much of these funds as we can before we run out the end of this year. So that's good. As far as the grants, we do have invoices 7, 8, 9 out. We did receive actual reimbursement of $15,000 on number 7, and we are awaiting payment on the other 2 invoices right now. Import Water Project. I'll just briefly, there's a lot of detail in the the Resources Manager report on what we've been doing. For all 3 phases, which include the design, the environmental, and the right-of-way, all 3 phases, we list the project meetings that we've had, both internal staff and with the consultants for each of those projects. We have multiple meetings we've had multiple meetings with these folks since our last board meeting, which are included. I'll just hit the next steps. We're expecting to get completed on all 3 items. For design, we are waiting for the 90% design submittal, which is the next step. Horace and Pritchard is working with AVEC on an evaluation, hydrologic design, hydrologic analysis, modeling analysis for the pipeline with AVEC. And then there's multiple submittals that are due to us, where they would help complete the 90% design submittal. Things that include tank design, electrical, hydraulics and transient mitigation analysis, mechanical pump selection, permitting analysis, corrosion design, incorporation of the new Edison power requirements and infrastructure. So all those would be included in the 90% design. After that, we would get 100% design submittal. So that's what we're on track for. For environmental services, again, mentioned the meetings we've had, multiple meetings. The next milestone there is a final environmental assessment and EIR, which we are waiting on right now. For the right-of-way services, multiple meetings, same thing with internally and with our consultants. We are expecting on our milestones coming up a final right-of-way plan, a final right-of-way acquisition plan on the areas in which we need to acquire property for the pipeline alignment, and then complete plats and legal descriptions for those parcels. So that's the next thing we are waiting for. We do provide a detailed review of our work with Blue Mountain, Omar, and he's been a big help. Good addition to our team. At the end, if Omar is on, at the end, Omar can certainly provide comments if he'd like at the end. I'll check on that when I get done. But there is a detailed review of the work we're doing with Omar, have been doing with Omar over the last month. Submittal to DWR. Kind of good. Our final deliverables, including the final invoice and final completion report, have been submitted for the DWR IP grant, and all of those have been approved, so we're in good shape. We're waiting that funding I mentioned before, but everything's been approved, which means we pretty much are in full compliance with the grant requirements with the state for that money that we acquired, that we applied for and were awarded. For the Drinking Water System Infrastructure Reliance and Sustainability Program, we were awarded almost $2.8 million for this. This is going to help us complete the design and all the planning work. So that grant was awarded in August. We have submitted one progress report, and we are in the process of preparing our first reimbursement request to the state. So that's really just getting started. For the Corps of Engineers, we're still working. This is an area where Blue Mountain and Omar are essential for us to get going with the Corps. Draft letter of intent was for the Corps to provide services under the Section 119 WARDA for disadvantaged communities was submitted and so it's prepared to go to the Corps, and we're working with Omar on that. I've already mentioned the consolidation projects. I mentioned our drop dead date for Rademacher Phase 2 is December 31st, so we're working on that. We are also looking at Stark Street, which the Water District has as a consolidation project, and we've executed a reimbursement agreement with the Water District to proceed with the Stark Street consolidation and to use these funds for that project. Self-Help has notified the folks on Stark Street that the whole water services are going to be terminated. So it is important that the consolidation project proceed. And we're looking at following up or concurrently working on the Stark Street along with the Rademacher project, again with the Water District. And again, appreciate their coordination and cooperation. That's what I have for the engineer's report, or the Water Resource Manager's report. I'm going to be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Steve. We'll bring it back to the board for any questions or comments.
I just had a quick question I've forgotten. Is there still an easement issue in those consolidations, Steve, that's being worked?
Yes, it's not. The issue is coordination, getting coordination with the homeowners to get the easement access. And I don't think we currently have any hard holdouts. It's just a matter of getting the coordination done. And we brought in a consultant that specializes in that to help us with that. I think it's on track, but I don't know of any real issues, but yes, we still have to get past that issue. That's the only thing holding the Water District back from starting the actual construction work.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the reminder. I should have known that, but.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Members of the board, may I clarify something? Because there was some confusion of terms with regard to the Army Corps of Engineers. There's no letter of intent. We filed an application with the Army Corps of Engineers for a planning assistance to states under section number 108, not 219. 219 would refer to the environmental infrastructure that is the construction of the pipeline. This is a separate grant application. It is actually to reinstate a grant that we were awarded several years ago, and we were unable to take advantage of. We're asking for them to give some reconsideration back to that for planning assistance to states funds. They are in the process of reviewing that at this time, and Omar has got a hold of that. So I didn't want to confuse you with a letter of intent, which is with regard to initiating the project on the pipeline versus a grant request, which is planning assistance to states, and the two sections. So that's only a clarification.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Steve? Okay, hearing none, we'll bring it to the floor for any public comment.
Hi, Kelly Cutts. I just want to reiterate my question that I asked earlier. If you could take a vote here today and decide if you're going to have a meeting, an evening meeting on June 8th. I see you voting on other things, and so I'd like to ask you to do that now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other public comment from the floor? Okay, any public comment on the phones? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to the general manager's report, and this will be with our general manager, April.
In your packet is the monthly financial report. I'm happy to ask any questions there. Typically in the beginning of the year, due to the heavy fluctuation we have between winter months and summer months, you're going to see decreased revenue right now, and that's completely normal. As we ramp up into these summer months, so will the revenue. So that is, otherwise there's nothing notable in the financials. I did talk to our financial director this week, and the 2025 audit workbook has been completed and will be submitted to the auditors to begin that process. Hoping to have the audit report by July, but given the holiday and everybody takes off, and our meeting is very early in the month, so I'm not sure that we'll make that deadline, but we will do our best. Moving down to the outreach item, we kind of already covered the website updates. It is something that we are updating every day as we realize things did not migrate over, or only certain years. So those are all things that we are changing by the day. Open and happy to take any recommendations or suggestions from the public. Then we have had Westbound. They haven't really submitted much in regards to reaching out to the Daily Independent or things like that. We just haven't had any notable items just yet, but I know there are some in the works, and you should see some Facebook engagement and other publishings here soon. For local, I have been going to some local events, and I commend Jennifer Slayton and Tammy Boyer for being able to get public engagement, even though it's not, we don't always agree on everything, and that's okay, but just seeing the engagement of the community has been very refreshing. And so thank you so much, and happy to see people coming to our board meetings. Obviously, it has come to this board a couple times in regard to nighttime meetings. I was going to address that I think the public workshop went very well, and I am so happy to come here, every couple months, 2 to 3 months, whatever the board feels necessary, and do those nighttime meetings. Of course, understandably, I'm limited to not being able to take action, or limited to the discussions that would be had, just because it would be a staff-held meeting, not the board. But if you would like to take any votes there, or we can move on to the next items, just wanted to address that with the board.
Okay. Any comments from the board?
Well, so speaking for the Water District, we would fully support, as a matter of fact, I think we've asked in the past, for this kind of consideration. I'm fully aware, though, that a lot of our board members travel from out of town, and it's pretty inconvenient. Some of these meetings can run like today, can run pretty late, which would have you guys driving home in the dark, or you maybe even getting home tomorrow, kinds of things. So it would require us to be very accommodating, like we have with Mr. McKinney and with Steve, to call in the, so you could participate but not have to actually travel here. But anyway, Water District would support it, and
Can I say a couple things about it? First off, you can set, you don't need to take board action. You can set a special meeting at a time just when you set the normal agenda. It's within the board president's ability to do that. The issue is a practical one, which is you've got 3 board members that have to travel and have a very complicated schedule. And they have to travel a couple hours. So we found in the past it's been difficult to get times at night because a lot of
Sure.
you guys are committed to other things. But having said that, though, I think our workaround has been we had the recent public workshop. I think the concern is that information is not getting out to the public through this forum. And so, I don't know the public necessarily needs you to see you vote on the consent calendar, to get the information out. So I think the workaround we've been suggesting is we have like a special meeting, but it's a staff meeting, and we can present information that we're trying to get to the public, like we did recently with that workshop. So maybe that's something that could be explored if it turns out that you guys aren't available to do night meeting next time. But we can talk about it. Like I said, you don't have to take action today to make that happen.
Okay.
Chairman Heyman, it's Leanne Cook. I have a question for council. They can't vote on it today. It's not agendized, right?
Yes, but that's correct. But also we don't need to have a public meeting to set a public meeting. So if for example, Chair Heeman wants to set a special meeting, we could do that. It wouldn't be the regular meeting, but we could, we can do that ordinarily in the Brown Act without having to take a vote.
And you're referring to
Thank you for that clarification, but I don't think the public understands that when we read that about your public comments, it's things that we can't act on today. And if it's not agendized by law, they can't vote on it. So you have to remember that when you ask these requests, give us the time to be able to put it on an agenda or whatever it is the board's will is to be. But you can't ask us to ask them to vote on something on that day if it isn't on the agenda.
Okay. And so my question is, we're just looking at maybe in the future having another town hall and updating and reviewing with the public?
If that's your direction.
May I make a comment on this specific issue?
So I think my viewpoint is that the last town hall was successful for the public. And I would be in favor of, pursuing another town hall at a time frame that new information, whether it's the safe yield, furthering of the safe yield trial, or the adjudication, or any major, new hurdles that we've achieved.
I notice we're getting a lot of questions about the pipeline.
Yeah.
So maybe that would be, where we are in the process, where we aren't in the process, that kind of thing. That sounds like that might be a good topic.
Yep. So
I think that was part of my notes here, but I think that would be a benefit as well. Just introduce Omar as, as he has, I'd say, taken over project management lead in a sense that he's going to help facilitate the coordination of moving the project over to the United States Army Corps of Engineers, and what that process is going to look like, what the environmental review process is going to look like. And that would be, I think, a great introduction of not only Omar's role, but where we are, where we've been, where we're going, and what the next 6 months to a year is going to look like.
Okay. I'd like to hear back from the other board members as to their opinion on it.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think that meeting was successful, the town hall, and I'm in favor of having those in the future. But as far as moving our standing meetings to a nighttime meeting, which I think is being asked. You know, the calendars of everybody have been worked around these meetings that are during the day. You know, there's many different agencies that are part of this, and it's not as simple as just moving it. Many of us sit on many different boards, have many different standing obligations already, and it would be a pretty monumental task to reschedule that. If it's a concern of not getting comments, I think the public can submit comments anytime to the board, and we get those. I know that April has her email address on the GA website. All of our office numbers, emails are all publicly available. We get those comments, they become part of the public record. So being here at this meeting is not the only way to get your comments and thoughts to the board. And so I wouldn't generally be in favor of trying to move this to a nighttime meeting. I mean,
I have no interest to bring that as an agenda item.
yeah.
May I comment on the general manager's report?
Go ahead.
Sure, yeah, sure.
So just, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the public perception of this body and why so many of us have gotten involved is because it's felt like for years we were talked to and not listened to. I think the decision to have more staff meetings where the board is not listening just furthers that perception. I understand the challenges. I drive to Lamont almost every day and back. So I get that the transportation, the scheduling is difficult. I'm not saying you have to move your meeting, but I do think a periodic chance for people to come out in the evening and feel like the people who are supposed to be representing them on groundwater, seeing their faces and knowing that they're listening to them and paying attention would go a long way toward adjusting the perception that we don't get a say in what's happening with our groundwater because we get press releases and articles that a lot of us don't agree with and don't ever feel like we get to be heard on our concerns. So I do think, not necessarily as a regular thing, have a town hall, maybe just show your hands if you agree with this, and nobody left, but I think a lot of us do. So an occasional meeting, a special meeting, twice a year, right now would be timely, where we actually can see the people who represent us, I do think would be an important step for the board's transparency.
Can I point out one thing about that comment?
Yes.
It is possible we have 2 local members. Again, I'm not trying to set your schedule for you, but there is nothing that would prevent the local members, or any member really, from showing, as long as we designate it as a meeting of the board, anyone can show up who's on the board. It's a public meeting at that point. So, you know, you can have board presence there. It doesn't necessarily require the full board.
Okay.
Is it a Brown Act issue that we need to manage, or?
It would be if this turned into a standing committee. I would treat this as a Brown Act meeting. I would notice it as a Brown Act meeting,
Okay.
Committee meeting, I guess
So
is what
the
I would call
members that would plan to participate would need to announce their plan in advance.
Right, we would have to make it clear, if this was a special meeting of the full board, then you could have 3 people there participating. If we called it a committee workshop or an ad hoc workshop, then you would have 2, up to 2, but not 3.
Okay.
And yeah, no formal action. It would be perhaps recommendations to bring things back or something.
Okay.
And that might address the issue of not feeling heard.
A step in the right direction.
So I'm not sure I need formal direction to set a date right now. If you'd like, I can kind of put together a memo as to what it could potentially look like and send that to the board for review and see if we can get a date in the future and what that agenda could possibly look like, and, you know, we gauge the preference on board participation or not.
Okay, I'm in agreement with that, so we don't need any action from the board today, though, on it. Okay.
No. And in fact, if we're having presenters, then we need to clear the times with those people too. So it would make sense to just go ahead and work with the board president to set something up.
Okay.
Okay, with that, I will run through the rest of the general manager report. In your packet, you'll also see there are correspondence between myself and the Inyo County Board of Supervisors. There has been on the Water District's closed session, a Little Lake negotiations. I'm assuming it would be a purchase of the water to use as an import project or replenishment project of some sort. I have had conversations with the previous general manager just to see if I could get an idea of what this project looks like. Understandably, it's in closed session, so I haven't been able to get any information there. Nor has the project been brought to our board, so we really don't know what it looks like. I reached out to Inyo County just to check in on the viability of the project. Understandably, Inyo, the Little Lake project would involve LADWP to some aspect, which we understand. The notion of Inyo County that, they voted no on the GSP due to LADWP being part of the projects in any capacity. I think it's important to note between the correspondence, the letter I received from Inyo County says, based upon this experience, Inyo County does not support the concept of exporting water from Inyo County to fix the consequences created by the decades of critical overdraft occurring in the Indian Wells Valley groundwater basin and the corresponding lack of planning foresight. I will not assume anything else beyond that from Inyo County other than Little Lake. I don't know where the project would stand on behalf of the water district, and I would encourage formal correspondence before any such purchases are made. And that's all I had there. I will move on to the water marketer report. I know Michael has given a hefty legislative update at this point, but if there is anything else you would like to add, I will turn it over to you.
I will just ask for questions.
Okay, any questions for Michael from the board? Okay, Michael, we don't have any questions from the board, so I think you are clear.
Yeah, thanks for the overview, though. That was very insightful, Mike.
You're welcome anytime.
Okay, that concludes the general manager's report. Do you have anything else to add? Or, I'm sorry, we'll bring it back to the floor for public comment.
If Michael is still there, I have a question. This is Judy Decker.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that AB 1413 was not dead. Could you give a little enlightenment on the status of that?
AB 1413 is sitting on the Senate floor right now. The Groundwater Authority's position is opposed unless amended. The bill could be amended. It could be re-referred back up to appropriations. It could be re-referred to a policy committee based upon Rules Committee requirements, or it could be discharged directly to the floor for consideration after amendment. That's about the most I can give you at this particular point in time. But it is not dead, and it has until August the 30th to get to the governor.
And who is the lead legislator on that?
It's Chair Pappen.
Thank you. I have something else that I neglected to say earlier, and that is, as president of the Eastern Kern County Resource Conservation District, our board yesterday approved a strong letter in opposition to the data center on a variety of issues, but we centered on the issue of groundwater, the lack of groundwater availability and the lack of honest representation by the developer in telling us how much water they will be using. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
I just want to give attention to the Inyo County. Mr. Frazier, the county administrative officer, it is at the very last paragraph of his response to the IWVGA's letter. He said, additionally, Inyo County continues to support the IWVGA's effort to connect the Indian Wells Valley groundwater basin to the Antelope Valley East Kern Water Agency water system. So I just want to emphasize that. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. guess on that same topic, I'd like to emphasize that there's not a project that the Water District has brought to this board in regards to Little Lake. So I think that's kind of confirmed in this letter. All right, so with that, any other public comment from the floor or from the phones? Seeing none, this meeting is now adjourned, and our next meeting will be July 8th, so we will see you all then.